We're going to do the first step of reed making today, which is tying the reed. So before we tie, we've got to make sure we have all the equipment we need. Right here we have our mandrel, your ruler with the millimeter markings on it. You have your beeswax. You have a thread. Double F nylon is what I recommend. And you need a staple, your knife, and a piece of cane. Your first step is going to prepare your cane. And we just want to scrape that very tip of both sides from where my fingers are to the end. So from here to here, we're going to scrape that thin so that it'll taper nice onto our staple. And we just want to make sure when we feel that it's a little bit thinner at the very edge. We don't want it to have a big ridge of bark. Okay, and if a little bit comes off, totally fine. See how we can see through that just a little bit. We just want that a little bit thinner than the rest of the cane so that it'll go on the staple. Now I have a nice sturdy table desk. You want to find something that's not going to move to tie these reeds onto. I recommend a table leg, something immovable, okay, and strong. So I take my string, I have the spool in the left hand, the loose piece in my right hand. Okay, I'm going to put the spool in my lap, and I'm going to pull the string around so that my tail, here's my tail in my right hand, went around the back of my table leg. Let me show you that again. We take the string, wrap it around the table leg, the tail is in my right hand. Okay, to make my knot, I'm going to cross over so that the right hand crosses over the left hand. Grab onto that cross with your thumb here and make a 4. I call this the friendship bracelet knot because this is the knot you use for a friendship bracelet. It makes a little triangle there with my thumb. This should be on top, and now you pull your tail underneath and into your loop and pull it against the table. Do this 4 or 5 times to make sure that it's secure. Alright, once we have that on our table, you're going to take your beeswax cake, wind up your spool, whoops, wind up your spool so that you don't have a lot of excess. And just in that first, I don't know, 8 inches or so, you're going to put a little bit of a beeswax layer on the string. Okay? Alright. Set that aside. Okay, once you have your cane prepped, we're going to select a staple. Okay, these are 47 millimeters long. And we fit that onto the mandrel handle. You want to make sure it's not moving and that it's flush with the top. Okay, and you'll notice it has 2 flat ends. This is an oval, not a circle. You want the cane to lay on the 2 wider ends of the staple. And when you look down your mandrel handle, we want to make sure that it's straight with the plane of the handle. And you're going to place the cane onto the staple with the bottom blade slipped to the left so that you can see a little bit of that bottom blade of cane poking out on the left side. With my left finger I'm touching that bottom blade and it's out just a little bit. That'll put some resistance against the string when we go to tie it. Okay, take your ruler and make sure you're somewhere between 73 and 74 millimeters total in length. I have this at 74, okay, from the bottom of the staple up to the top of the cane. I just want to make, that's my rough starting point. It's always subject to change. Every piece of cane is different. We make adjustments accordingly. Now, hold on to that piece of cane with your left hand onto the staple. You're going to take your spool of thread with your right hand stick the string between your two middle fingers so that you have a good grip, that the spool is in the middle of your hand and your thumb is going to be touching the string like so. Okay, we lay our reed on top of our string, and you're going to do 3 loose wraps. I'm going to see if I can change our camera angle so you can see what I'm doing a little bit better. So we take 3 loose wraps. Never go over the top of the staple. Okay? And you want to make sure that your 2 sides are always matching. So we're going to look at those openings, okay, and make sure that they're the same, never exceeding the top of that staple. Now, you'll notice that if I have this tight, I can move this hand freely. I can move my cane, so I'm going to look down my staple handle, and I'm going to notice that it's a little bit crooked. So with my index finger and my thumb, I can loosen the string a tiny bit, but still holding on so it doesn't move, and I can move my cane. Okay. Now look, those are pretty close to the same. They're both a little bit open, which is fine. I still have about 3 millimeters, 4 millimeters to turn this up. In fact, because of that, we're going to move it down just a hair. Okay. Now if you have to, double check that you're still at the right length. You can measure for the 47 millimeters of your staple. See how I wiggle this with my finger to get that to go on the right way. To tie, this is where this is super tight, so is this. Okay, I'm pulling all the time. This hand is just holding this still. With my thumb on the string, I'm going to guide the string in between my bottom wrap and my string that's attached to the table. And I'm going to pull tight every single time, and I'm going to continue to do that. Whoops, I slipped. Let's try that one more time. Doesn't help to talk to a camera while tying your reed. Kind of slipped down just a little bit on my staple. I must have bumped it. Okay. Oops. Okay. We're back to sealed tight. Whoops. We're going to do, that's fine. Okay. Just because I'm second guessing myself. Yep, we're back in the right spot. Okay, so with that thumb, I'm guiding that wrap every single time between my bottom wrap and the string tied to the table. Pulling tight, making sure that they're right next to each other. You want all of the wraps to be good and sealed. You don't want them to move. That's part of what the beeswax is for. It holds it in place, keeps the string from slipping. Okay, and you're going to do that until you get to the bottom. I still see a little bit of my staple, but not a ton. And I'm going to hold on with my left index finger, and I'm going to drop my spool. Okay, point your thumb down. Your fingers are going to grab that string, turn it into a circle, put it over the top of the reed, and pull tight. And you're going to do this 3 or 4 times. And make sure it's just good and snug with the bottom of the staple. Okay, last step for this tie. Take the string that's attached to the spool, pull it tight, and give it a little snip with either a razor blade or your knife. Okay, and there we have our tied reed. All right. Let's check and make sure before we go on, because it's not too late to fix things. Let's make sure that we have all of our steps done correctly. We want to check for leaks. We want to make sure that we didn't go over the top of the staple, so we want to make sure that tie is only at 47 and no higher. Okay, so first step, check, oops, that our top is right there at the 47 millimeters. Okay, almost has it. There we go. So We haven't gone over the staple top. I dip it in some water just to check and see if we're leaking. Now, there's often going to be, right here below the ears, we're going to have a little bit of air come out because there's a, come on, focus. Let's see if we move this, if we can see a little better. Okay, so right up here, right underneath our ears, there's going to be water, or there's going to be air come out because it's not sealed tight. So close that. And then if you blow in the staple, you'll see if air comes out. You can also suction. You're hearing it up at the top. And we might have a little bit of a leak. If you hear that. Okay, so to make sure it's not leaking after you've tied it, I went ahead and tied another one. I'll show you the one we did. I retied it. The one side sealed just fine. The other side, it looks like there's a tiny warp in the cane. It may or may not matter once we cut it open, so I decided to just leave that alone. But for the sake of showing you a non-leaky reed, I wanted to also show we retied. If you suck on your reed right here where your string is, again avoiding the ears, you shouldn't get any sound. You can also do the blow through. And as long as there's no water or air coming through, you've got a good sealed reed. You want to check a couple things before you go on, and that's to make sure that you are somewhere above 72 millimeters. If you look at this one, this reed I tied second. Let's line that up right with the bottom of my ruler. It's about 74, okay, right on where I want it. Let's look at the first one that we did, just to double check it as well. Again, right at that 73 it looks like, which is just fine. 70s are our finish length goal, so as long as we've got room to clip, we're good, okay? And that's the first step of tie.